Hi guys, and welcome to my 2023 plant tour. So let's start with the plants on my table. This here is a Tenanthe setosa, I believe, and I really love the pattern on this on the leaves, as well as how big the leaves can get, plus the very nice reddish underside. This is a cutting that my mom has given me, so I'm trying to grow its roots in this perlite and vermiculite mix, and it seems to be going really well. So really happy with this plant. Next up is this asparagus fern. I really love the texture of the leaves, where they're kind of like hair-like, but they're not prickly. The shade of green that it comes in as well, I really like. Other plant on the table is just this neon pothos. I was kind of like on the fence before whether I wanted a neon pothos or not, but I bit the bullet, and I can say that I really like the color. I thought it would come in more yellowishly, but it's just a really light green color. Very slow growing though. I got this together with other pothos at the same time, but this one has barely even trailed. It's only just starting to trail. The other ones have already trailed a lot. So a slow grower in my experience. So speaking of pothos, I have this golden pothos here that is hanging. It is actually my first pothos, which I got almost a year ago now. So I'm really happy with how it has trailed. It's really long, and I also chopped this up when I did my pothos propagation experiment before. Looking really nice. It has bounced back from the chop. If you really want that jungle vibe, I think a pothos is really a quintessential plant to add in your collection. And next to it is my Philodendron Brazil, which I absolutely love. I love the patterning on this plant. I love how it looks. And it's looking like that because I can't figure out if I want it to be trailing or climbing, because it doesn't really look that well trailing, at least my own. And I find it really hard to have it climbing as well because the vines are just hard to wrap around. So I'm just gonna let it do its thing and see how it goes from here. But I really love this plant. And next up is my Boston fern, which I really love. Out of all the ferns I have, I think this one is one of the easiest, if not the easiest. The only thing is, since it is a fern, you wanna keep the soil regularly moist. The Boston fern, I find, is much more forgiving with lower humidity. During the summer, my humidity levels were at around 20 degrees relative humidity, which is very dry. You just have to make sure you're watering it regularly. It does not like to fully dry out. Other than that, very easy to care for. I love this plant a lot. Since we are talking about plants that are up, let's continue. And here is my Maranta leucanera, one of the easiest Marantas out there. I love the red accent on the leaves, and this one happens to be blooming. So this is actually the second bloom. It bloomed early spring. Now that we are transitioning to fall season, it seems to bloom again. It's just a pleasant surprise to see when your plants are blooming. And next we have this Scindapsus pictus argyrius, which is another easy plant to take care of. However, I encountered a problem with this. I think I underwatered, so much so that the roots had dried out and died. I noticed a lot of the leaves from multiple vines were just starting to shrivel up and dry out. So I tried to save them by propagating them. So if you can see why this pot is full, is because I put the propagations in it, which is, I guess, a mistake now, because now it's going to be too many cuttings in this one pot. But that's a problem for another day. And here are just some cuttings. These were kind of like unexpected cuttings, and I'm just growing it in this perlite vermiculite mix again, just to help it root out, and we'll just see later what I decide to do with it. And then here is my Syngonium white butterfly, which is an easy plant to take care of, but they are just I find that syngoniums are very sensitive to overwatering, very susceptible to root rot, and once root rot comes in, it becomes really hard to save the plant. I had like 4 or 5 other syngoniums. Most of them were a cultivar of this Syngonium podophyllum, but they all died over the winter because it was so hard to rescue them from the root rot. Once root rot sets in, it just becomes really hard to stop it, and unfortunately all of the other Syngoniums just died. This is my first Syngonium and the last Syngonium standing as well. Almost also lost this to root rot, but we managed to bounce back. And then I have this other plant here, which you might be thinking, what the hell is that plant? Well, I tell myself that every day, every morning. But this is my Hoya Bella, which came in already dehydrated because I had ordered it during the middle of the summer. And for weeks, my Hoya Bella just wouldn't recover and I couldn't figure out why. And I finally came upon this video by Basie Plants, who is just a Hoya prodigy. He basically had this video which is essentially a masterclass on Hoya, and there I learned that Hoya Bellas are one of those Hoyas that is an exception to the rule. They don't like too much light and they actually require frequent watering. Now some of the leaves have already started to bounce back, but the majority of the leaves still look wrinkly. I don't know if it's gonna be saved, but we'll just see how it goes. But since we're in the topic of Hoyas, let's just continue with the Hoyas. This here is my Hoya pubicalyx, which is my very first Hoya actually that I got. And I really like the long viney aspect of it. And then here is my Hoya Crimson Queen. It has a lot of white leaves, but I'm more excited about the blooms. But again, I don't know if this will bloom anytime soon. Probably not next year, but we can only hope. And this here is my Hoya Croniana Black, which also is appearing a little bit shriveled. It is faring much better than the Hoya Bella. The leaves are a little bit more plump, and we are already starting to get those dark or blackish leaves. And this here is my Monstera Deliciosa, which I absolutely adore. I have it staked on this wooden plank, and I have chopped up the other Monstera vines that were in this pot because they were sticking out so much so that I didn't really like the growth pattern. So this is a singular Monstera plant on this pot, and ever since staking it, it has grown one. You can see that this new leaf that has emerged is highly fenestrated and has a lot of holes compared to the older leaves, although it is a little bit smaller. And I have one plant on its pot, which is the Phlebotum aurum. It's essentially a blue star fern, and as you can see, the leaves are bigger and ruffled, which I thought was interesting. So let me take you closer to the plants on here. I made this sort of like a small fern garden. It has a Pteris albolineata and a Pteris tricolor and a heartleaf fern here. Humidity is really low during the summer for me, so I thought if I put them together, maybe they will, thrive together, or at least do better together. It seems that the Pteris albolineata is doing really well. There are some dry and crispy leaves. I also have this small terracotta pot, which I basically use as like a reservoir and way to slowly but steadily release moisture into the soil. That's pretty much how I water it. I just fill this reservoir with water and it just keeps the soil moist at all times. And this here is my very sad looking blue star fern. So over the summer I had an incident of it sitting in water probably for days, which caused it to lose a lot of its leaves because it doesn't want to be waterlogged. So yeah, it's on the path to recovery. So it's sad that we're back to square one essentially. And here is another fern that I have, which is an asplenium, or a bird's nest fern. I heard it's one of the easier ferns to keep. In my experience, so. And here I just have some spathiphyllums in water, which I have been growing for a year now in water, and it's just doing really well. So here is my Calathea makoyana, which is a plant that I really like. I initially had it on a 2-inch pot. I got this, I think, early in spring, and I since had moved it into a larger pot and is growing nicely and steadily. Although it has kind of like lost some of its variegation. I'm not sure why, probably it wants more light. And here's my rattlesnake calathea, which I absolutely adore. I like the long leaf shape, the red underside, as well as the pattern on the leaf. Just like my makoyana, this was a baby plant. It was in a 2-inch pot, and I have since moved it into this about 4 or 5-inch pot. Not a very fast grower, but easy to care for so far for me. Now let's move on this side of the table. Here is another bird's nest fern, which is much bigger. I was at the big box store and I saw this huge asplenium for like €5, which blew my mind because the tiny asplenium that I showed earlier was €4.50. And this one is just 50 cents more expensive and is this big. So sometimes the big box stores have the better deal. And this here is my Monstera adansonii, which was quite a journey. I expected this to be more of a leg-year growth, but it's looking more compact than I envisioned. And I'm really happy how it's turning out. So really happy with this one. And next is my philodendron painted lady, which I absolutely adore. I love the coloration, super easy to care as well. The one thing I noticed with this and my other philodendrons as well is that during the summer, when humidity is really low, they can have a difficult time unfurling its leaves. So I have some of these leaves that are wrinkly and did not develop very well. But that's fine, it's not a big problem for me. And another plant that I absolutely adore is another fern. This is the staghorn fern, which has grown so much for me. It started out in this baby 2-inch pot, and it is much bigger now, but really happy with how this has developed. And then I have this polka dot plant. It is like really tall, as you can see, and it is currently blooming. I don't hate it, but really interesting to see how it has developed. One of that supposedly easy plants, which is true, is not hard, but it is really sensitive to drought. And last on this table is my snake plant, which I have been growing for over a year now in water, similar to my spathiphyllums. It's doing great in water. I haven't had any issues so far. It's a very slow growing plant, but good in low light as well as in high light. And here is my philodendron micans that I almost forgot to mention because it's hanging up above here on this shelf. But yes, I really love this plant. Almost killed it, but I was also able to rehab it with my aquarium experiment. It was previously in sphagnum moss, and now I have transitioned it just recently into this perlite vermiculite mix. And next I have my string of hearts, which I practically had to save because it was dying of root rot. I transferred it in moss, which took very well. Now the only problem is, how am I going to transplant this? The roots are really small and delicate, so I definitely want this to be hanging again in a pot, but I'm not sure how we will do that now. So that's the only downside when you're trying to propagate with moss, is the roots will latch onto the moss and then it becomes really hard to separate them, especially when the roots of the plant are as tiny and delicate as a string of hearts, for example. And down here I have my ZZ plant, which I almost lost to root rot, but thankfully we were able to rescue it this spring. I only got one growth, which is this one here. Other than that, I'm just happy that it is now well and healthy. And down here I have my temporary holding tank because I have these propagations which I rooted in water. And this Rhaphidophora tetrasperma is actually a plant that I had to rescue because it had severe root rot. I thought it wouldn't make it, but in one of my previous videos I used my aquarium as an experiment to save my dying plants, and this is one of the success stories. It has rooted so much, like look at all of these. Just like my Monstera dawsonii, the old leaves would turn yellow even though it continues to grow, and that's because it's not receiving enough nutrients. So that's another thing with moss, is it's kind of like hard to fertilize your plant because moss does not really hold nutrients that well. So I'm still debating how I'm going to deal with this. Probably try and transfer it into another soil medium. And here is the other Monstera that I have. And let me tell you that Monsteras are kind of hard to propagate actually, because the roots, it will root, but then the roots tend to rot really quickly. This one, look at that. This big root here just died off, even though it had a lot of these healthy roots down there. It still has a nice healthy root system, but yeah, I need to finally make a decision on how I will deal with this, if I'm going to pot it. And here I have some plants on this mobile storage unit, which basically allows me to move plants out of the way and also have them right in front of this window. This way I can move easily in and out of the balcony. And here is one of my new favorite plants, and this is my Philodendron bilietiae, which I really love the feel, the texture of this leaf and how it is shaped. Very slow growing though. I've only had one leaf since I got it. I did get this in the middle of summer. This is the only leaf I've gotten. There is a growth here, but I'm not sure if it's going to be unfurling anytime soon. And then here is my Philodendron Birkin, which I've had for quite a while. This is actually one of the plants that I bought when I kickstarted my indoor jungle, and it has grown so much. Very easy to grow. I find that it likes a really bright light though, which is why I have it right here in front of the window. And the patterning and the variegation is just so variable. Like I have these that are a bit more yellowish, another that are a bit more white, and then I have a half moon. It's just giving me everything. And the other plants I have down here, I have this Philodendron squamiferum, which previously I was kind of on the fence of getting because I already have the Philodendron Florida Green, which is a hybrid of this and the pedatum. I saw a baby plant that was on sale, so I thought why not get it. And I really like the hairiness of the petiole as well as the redness the closer it is to the leaf. And here is a new growth that's coming out. And here I have my Philodendron hastatum, or the silver sword philodendron. I really love the color on this leaf. I wanted a bigger specimen of this, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I could only find them being sold in baby pots. So I got one. It actually has grown a lot. But I propagated it so that I would have more than one plant so that it would look more bushy. It's not looking its best because I should do a better job at watering it, but I really love it and I hope I can grow with this to be a big plant someday. And here are just some propagations, some Scindapsus pictus and some Cebu blue pothos wet sticks that I'm trying to grow in perlite and a vermiculite mix. And here is just another Spathiphyllum growing in water. And on the bottom here are just some moss propagations. In this container are some aquatic Java moss. This is another aquatic Java moss. I really like how they are growing out like this. And here is a sphagnum moss propagation actually. And really interesting how what you think is dead, dried moss can actually still spark new life. And up here I have my collection of trailing plants. Here is my Monstera siltepecana, which I absolutely adore. Very easy to grow. This was actually the first plant that woke up during the spring season and was growing like crazy, so much so that you actually have to be on top of fertilizing it, otherwise it's going to sacrifice its older leaves in order to produce new leaves. The moment I transitioned it into my slow release fertilizer, the Osmocote that I use, it started putting out huge leaves. Although I have noticed that it has lost the silver coloration on the leaf, probably due to lack of lighting. It's already very close to the window, so I'm not sure how much more light it needs. And here I have my Marble Queen pothos, which has grown really long. This is one of the other pothos that I got at the same time as the neon pothos, and they were pretty much the same size. As you saw earlier, my neon pothos, it was barely even trailing, but this one is trailing so much already. Ever since having moved it into this location, the variegation is not as intense anymore. Some barely have variegation. Since we are in fall season and moving into winter, I foresee that it will have even less variegation, probably even lose all its variegation, but that's fine. We'll see what I'll do about that. And here is my Cebu Blue pothos, which I also got at the same time as the Marble Queen and Neon pothos, and as you can see, super fast grower. I think I should propagate it even more so that I can have like a fuller plant, but right now I'm really enjoying how long this is, so maybe we'll propagate it come spring. And here is my Pearls and Jade pothos, which, so if you wanted a smaller version of a pothos, then this would be perfect, and the variegation is also really lovely. A little bit of a slower grower, but definitely faster than the neon pothos, that's for sure. Now moving down here, I have my Anthurium clarinervium, my first Anthurium. Well, no, that's not my first Anthurium, it's my second, but the first Anthurium of the more uncommon type. It's really lovely. I love the pattern and the almost velvety texture to it. And this here is my Philodendron Florida Green, which I absolutely adore. Super easy to care for a plant. Kind of a fast grower as well. Not very fast, but it would have been even taller if it had not snapped. I was thinking about propagating it, but I was undecisive until it decided for me, and I just woke up to it one day where it had snapped. But it turned out really well because now I have two plants instead of one. I rooted out the part that snapped, and it's down here which has rooted well. And next up here is my Philodendron Ring of Fire. This one came in like this, so I was really disappointed when I saw that it had these brown edges. I think it was because I ordered it during the summer, so it was really hot, it was dehydrated. Anyways, not a very big problem. We'll just have to grow it out. And here are some Anthurium idrianum, which I am growing in moss. The mother plant unfortunately succumbed to root rot and died, but I tried to save the offshoots, and they have successfully actually grown in moss. Yes, I haven't got them to bloom. I'm not sure if it's a maturity issue or a lighting issue or a nutrient issue, but I'm good with that. It doesn't bother me if it doesn't bloom. And here is just another propagation, another Scindapsus pictus. Yeah, I have them everywhere because there were a lot of like unexpected propagations that I had to do. And this one here is a Monstera Peru propagation. Yeah, my Monstera Peru is not really doing well, as you can see here. It was doing pretty well up until I decided to repot it. I repotted it into an even chunkier and airier mix, but somehow it still got root rot. So I'm trying to save it now. The leaves, thankfully they're not yellowing, but they are looking really droopy and dehydrated. So this time I put them in this mix of cocoa coir and perlite. And here is some Philodendron Brazil cuttings. I'm trying to propagate them because I want to have a more fuller Philodendron Brazil. And I have this in vermiculite, same as this one here, because I'm interested to see how well it would do. Propagation. And here is the last of my Hoyas. This one here is my Hoya Lisa, which I was initially so in love with. I really liked the coloration and the redness coming out of the new leaves. But I don't know, it's being a bit of a diva for me. As you can see, this one here has already lost a lot of its leaves. I thought maybe because I was watering it too much, even though I was watering it once a week, even less so. So I'm still trying to figure out how much water this one wants. It's feeling a little bit thirsty right now, and even then I am wary of watering it because it seems like every time I water it, it's going to drop leaves. So if any of you guys have any tips for Hoya Lisa, please let me know. Thank you in advance. And here is just another Monstera Peru. It was actually a long vine because it was growing really well for me. So I decided to chop it and propagate it because I imagine it would be hard for the plant to sustain all the leaves if we're just going to rely on one node making roots. So in this case, I chopped them into multiple parts, and we're just gonna have more Monstera Perus, hopefully, when they root out. This one here is my Phytonia, which has grown a decent amount since I got it last year. A very slow grower. I cannot count how many times I have forgotten to water this, only to catch this fully drooping. I thought it was donezo. I thought it was over, it's dead, but just water it, and after a few hours, it's gonna be perked up again. This here is just another golden pothos, which is basically cuttings from the pothos that I showed you earlier. And up here, I just have my crocodile fern, which I have transferred in this moss. I really like the texture of it. However, it's not really growing for me. And the last of my pothos is this Pothos Global Green, which I also absolutely adore. I really like this green on green variegation, the light green on the dark green. Also got this at the same time as my Marble Queen and Neon Pothos, and as you can see, this one is trailing like nobody's business. And the last of my indoor plants are just here, right outside of my bedroom, next to this window here. I have my Chinese Evergreen, super easy to care for. You just have to water it every now and then and give it some fertilizer to help sustain its growth, because this just grows non-stop. Not very fast growing, but still very nice and lush and healthy and easy to care for. And here is my Philodendron Tortum, which I am not really happy with. I feel like the pictures are just more beautiful. This one here is not really doing anything for me. There are two plants in this here. It has only grown one leaf on each for me, and they didn't even turn up that well. Like, I don't know if this was a humidity problem or whatnot. I suspect it's humidity problem, but yeah, it's just not giving me joy as I thought it would. And the last plant inside the house is my Philodendron Gloriosum, which has been through a lot. These are all the new leaves. The original leaves it has come with, all are gone. This plant actually had a fungal infection, and I had to remove a lot of its leaves and had to rehab it. But thankfully, this is the newest leaf that has come out, and it's looking pretty normal. So hopefully it's going to be smooth sailing from here. So let me just give you a voiceover tour of my balcony plants, because it is pretty noisy outside. And here is my majestic Kimberly Queen Fern. Well, it used to look majestic. I guess it's still acclimating outside. It's doing fine. But yeah, I was amazed that this was only 12 euros when I bought it from the garden store. But yeah, it just didn't make sense inside because it is so big. So I have it outside here. And here is my Aloe, Jurassic Chameleon, and Pleiospeleos Nellii. And right above here is my Madagascar Periwinkle. This is not the original one. My mom got me a new one. The new one died. I actually got it to rebloom, but then somehow it deteriorated and died. So my mom got me a new one and it's here. These are super cheap. I think €2. You can buy them at the garden center or even at the farmer's market. And this here is my bougainvillea, which had a major freak out because I repotted it. It's such a shame because it was so full of blooms, it was so lush, and it just didn't like the repot. But at least now it's coming back. And then here is my Tradescantia Nanook, which I previously had indoors. This plant is just so much better off outdoors. As you can see, the growth is so compact, the color is vivid, and it's even blooming. And this here is a type of daisy, I believe. Not a lot of blooms. I'm having trouble with these guys to bloom. I do have some blooms here left over, but yeah. Flowering plants is another tall order. And these two here are some French lavenders, which has seen better days. We're still trying to get there. And this here is another type of daisy. I think I like the foliage on this one much more, and it's really looking nice and lush and vivid. However, I can't seem to get them to bloom. If they do have blooms, they dry out pretty fast. So that's another challenge for me. And this here is an Acer palmatum, the Sangu Coco. Acers, I love acers, but they are really hard plants to take care of, at least when they're this young. This is not the first Acer I've got. I previously had the Benny Maiko, but that one died because it dried out. I learned the hard way that they do not want to dry out at all. So my tip is, if you want an Acer palmatum, get a more mature specimen. And here I just have some Aeonium cuttings which were given by my mother. And here is a Kalanchoe. And here are the pepper plant, which I am really proud of having grown them because I did sort of deadhead them last winter. And this here is the jasmine tree that I have. Well, it's not really a tree, but I did stake it up because it isn't really looking that good. And here's a jade plant and a mini olive tree, which could be better. And down next to it is a miter aloe. And here is my first Ficus elastica, doing really nicely. And this here is my yucca tree, more jade plant. And here is my Thaumatophyllum bipinnatifidum, which I have it outdoors because it is such a big plant and seems to be doing pretty well outside. Not too much sun damage. And down here is my baby sunrose, which I find that they want to be outside but not under direct sunlight. As you can see, there is a lot of dried leaves. That's because I had it outside in the sun and it did not like it. So I have it in a shaded area. And here's just a ton of miter aloe. Some pelargoniums. And an Indian shot, and wow, I did not realize how big these Indian shots can get. I am obsessed. I will be taking them more seriously now. I actually have a ton of them. They seem to be putting out runners or something because they are just multiplying like crazy. And here I have my Ficus lyrata, which was previously indoors, and I moved it here in the beginning of spring. As you can see, the mature leaves did not really do well. It had a lot of sun damage. It did not like it, but I didn't really have the space for it inside, and this thing needs a lot of light. But I was surprised that in spring it actually grew out these leaves, and it seems to have acclimated outdoors. As you can see, the new leaves have no sun damage, so they are acclimatized to brighter light, and it's just continuing to grow. I guess now the problem is I need to bring it indoors for the winter because it's not gonna like the cold weather outside come winter. So that is my 2023 plant tour. My plants have more than doubled, and I am so happy and excited with my journey so far. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.